All right, yeah, my name is Paul Spiegel. I'm a transhumanist lawyer. I'm also a board member of the International Longevity Alliance, and I'm an advisor to quite a few people in the community, including a number of people that are up on that board. I want to thank Keith and Oliver and Lifespan.io for wonderful work that they've been doing, particularly with regard to the major mouse testing program, which we concluded recently, raised remarkable amount of money for Senolytics testing by Alexandra Stolzing. I also want to thank all of the rest of the speakers here because you guys are great. I don't even really know what I should do to follow that. I feel kind of like the guy who follows after the circus with the broom sweeping up after all the performers have gone by. But I hope you'll bear with me for a couple of seconds all the same. What Keith and Oliver have done here is very remarkable in that they have created a way for everybody to participate in the science of life extension in a way that really hasn't been done before. As Keith pointed out very clearly, you could go on Kickstarter or something like that, and not only would you get a diverse range of things from electric cappuccino frothers to God knows what, but you'd also get all kinds of solicitations from things you weren't interested in, whereas Lifespan.io gives you the opportunity to fund what's important to you and what's more importantly important to us. Now, I've been involved with the longevity community for quite a few years. I remember reading a popular science article on Aubrey about 2005, maybe it was, yes, wherein somebody said that he was a wild-eyed lunatic, and I remember thinking, I kind of like this idea. I met Aubrey a few years ago, and I think the first thing I said to you was, you don't sound like the wild-eyed lunatic that everybody makes you out to be, and it turns out, of course, that he wasn't. But over the years, I have watched this community grow from a concept to a movement to a force to an industry. And it's been really remarkable. I mean, we stand at the verge of a truly remarkable social transformation here, the actual reestablishment of the human lifespan on terms that have been absolutely unthinkable until now. People have always assumed that death, aging, all of the illnesses related to aging, they are inevitable, that you can't do anything about it. And now they're beginning to pay attention to us. They're beginning to listen to us. And this has created problems. I'm an attorney. I am an advocate by trade. I spend a lot of time defending people. And I have been defending a lot of people over the years from detractors, many of whom are in our own community, who have terrible things to say about each other, really each other. These are our own people here. And I thought, what do we do about this? And I thought about it for a while, and I realized we've been here before. We have faced these challenges, and we have something to look to. That's when I started to think about James Connolly. Well, this should be working. Thank you. James Connolly was an Irish revolutionary. He was one of the founders of the Irish Republic. He was actually executed by the British for his role in this, and he was a socialist. Now, 150 years ago, approximately, socialism was what longevity research is today. It was the hottest intellectual concept in the world, and there were hundreds of people espousing different versions of it, different concepts, different ways to go about it, and a lot of them argued with each other. Some of them fought with each other. Hell, some of them even killed each other because they knew that theirs was the right way and the other people were lunatics. And Connolly made a speech where he came across this wonderful quote. He says that he makes no war against patriotism. Remember, he was a political patriot here. But against the patriotism of capitalism, I place the patriotism of the working class, which judges every act, I'm editing a little here, by its effect upon the fortunes of those who toil. And then his key quote, that the socialist of another country is a fellow patriot as the capitalist of my own country is a natural enemy. We need to remember this in our own movement today. We have a lot of really brilliant and dedicated people working on longevity research, and we are confronting a lot of people who believe still that aging is inevitable and there's nothing to be done about it. What's happening though, and which disturbs me a lot, and I really feel the need to follow up and talk about this, is the fact that we are undercutting each other. I cannot tell you how many times I have stood up and said, look, you know, you may not agree with this person's research, but they're part of our team. You cannot just undercut them. You cannot detract from their work, because the inevitabilists will seize on that. People love controversy. And they will tell you that these people are wrong and that we're all nuts because of it. The problem is that we don't know who's nuts and who's not. The wisest scientist among us may be wrong. And we don't know whether or not that's going to be you or me. Actually, I'm not a scientist, but you know what I'm saying. Somebody is going to find the answer, or part of the answer, or all of the answer, and somebody else will have said that they are insane. And that is something we have to remember, is that even the experts may be wrong. I'm just going to give you one example here. William Lord Kelvin is a fairly well-known physicist from mostly the 19th century. And Kelvin took some very strong positions on some things which he was certain were correct. One of them was that heavier than air flying machines are impossible. I'm sorry, these are lousy slides, but that's beside the point. Kelvin took a very strong position. He said that heavier than air flying machines are impossible, and that he has not the smallest molecule of faith in aerial navigation other than ballooning. He also opined about 1900 that there's nothing more to be discovered in physics now. That was a few years before Albert Einstein. Remember, Kelvin was one of the most respected scientists of his day. He also had a lovely little comment about Charles Darwin. He calculated the age of the Earth from its cooling rate and concluded that it was too short to fit in with Darwin's theory of evolution. Now remember that he was basically detracting from the cutting-edge science of the day, and he was wrong. Very wrong. The problem is that science in his day was largely self-funded and largely self-proving. It really didn't matter if Lord Kelvin said that heavier-than-air flight was impossible, that heavier-than-air flight could not be achieved. Because the minute that the Wright brothers' airplane flew, the entire world knew that he was wrong, and it didn't matter how prominent he was, and it didn't matter what he said. There was an airplane, it was flying, and within 10 years there were airplanes all over the world, flying everywhere, and we all know where it's gone since then. So we don't know which one of us is going to be wrong, and which one of us is going to be right. We cannot keep undercutting ourselves this way. It is essential that we remember that we are all on the same team. Not just for our own purpose, but also because we have what I call the inevitabilists, the people who really believe that death is inevitable, that aging is inevitable, that disease cannot really be cured. It can just be fended off for a while until sooner or later, yes, you get old and you die. I don't think any of us as life extensionists believe that. Now, this brings me back again to Mr. Connolly. I'm just going to bring up his slide once more so you'll see, because he was talking about a political patriotism. Connolly was talking about what was, for his day, the most important thing in the world. We now are talking about an intellectual patriotism. It's what I call inevitabilism. It's the tendency of people to believe what they need to believe, what they want to believe, even in the face of an increasing body of science that says that they might be wrong. And we, as life extensionists, have a duty and an obligation not just to undercut each other, but also to persuade the inevitabilists that what we are doing is good and what we are doing is right. Now, this is just a minor point, but it's a big one, and I came up with a new life extensionist manifesto, which plays a little bit on Connolly. Where are we? There we are. I need you to read this. You probably won't agree with me, but then that's the whole point here, isn't it? We're not supposed to undercut each other's concepts. The basic concept is that we do not make a war on intellectual patriotism. We are, though, trying to set up our own example against the patriotism of the inevitabilist, people who accept aging is inevitable. We place the patriotism of the life extensionist, which judges every person and every act by its effect upon the crusade to end aging and to relieve human suffering. Therefore, we have to remember that the life extensionist of another country, another discipline, or another methodology is a fellow patriot, an intellectual patriot, while the inevitabilist, however he can express himself, like aging itself, is a natural adversary, one which we hope by our work to turn into a new ally, to overcome and to put behind us. Now, I don't know where I follow up with that, except to say that as we leave tonight, I think it is incumbent upon every last one of us to do what I've been doing for years, which is to defend each other, to remind people that no matter how much they may disagree with somebody's particular philosophy, particular methodology, particular treatment or science or belief, that we are all working towards the same goal. And that there is nothing that any of us can do on a daily basis that is more important than to defend each other and to make sure that what we are doing is properly perceived by the world, rather than just thrown to the wolves of inevitabilists who will say, it'll never work. So remember Lord Kelvin, remember heavier than air flight. And remember that the people that say that it will never work are probably wrong. I want to thank you on this one. I don't know what else to say, but thank you. Any questions? Question? No?
It was a great talk, so starting out with that. But don't you think that the process of science requires this organized skepticism thing, where we look at each other's work and check it for things that might be wrong? And this, I mean, the evolution of science requires us basically to improve on each other's work and to find flaws in it so that we can evolve from the dialogue that follows.
Absolutely. I mean, scientific inquiry thrives on this. It's a process of evolution, an intellectual process of evolution. But there is a difference between, and Liz, forgive me if I use you as an example, between saying that Liz Parrish's work is untested, that nobody's done this before, and that it is fairly radical, and saying that Liz Parrish is a dangerous lunatic. And I have heard people say that, and I've defended her against it. I don't think Liz is a dangerous lunatic at all, or I wouldn't have defended her. There is a difference. Yes, we should challenge each other, but when we are in public, and particularly when we are in public and discussing with inevitabilists the possibility that what we are doing may be useless, I don't think we can afford to undercut each other. We have to remember that even if we question, even if we disagree, even if privately we think somebody is a lunatic, we shouldn't say so in public because it hurts our cause. It's not good for us.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. This is actually both a comment as well on your conversation, as well as a compliment in general, because everything you said, I really agreed with that. That we indeed do have to stand together and to basically get more people on board and to convince the people who are still wanting to die that life extension is the best way to go. And because every time I run into a discussion with someone, they start talking immediately about how terrible dementia is or other age-related problems. And the first thing I tell them is that the whole point is to work on those things first, to prevent that, to grow old healthily and to stay young. But by then they become so emotional they just stop listening. I was wondering if you do maybe have some advice on how to prevent that.
Well, that's a difficult one. When people stop listening, it's hard to get them to start again. That is human nature. Once you've shut your mind off, you tend to pour a wall of concrete across the entrance to make sure that nothing else comes in. I just try to remind them, as I've just explained here, that they could very well be wrong. Remind them that lots of people, lots of very respected, brilliant people thought that airplanes would never fly. Now, you know, as a number of people here have said, nobody will say, yeah, I want to die tomorrow, or I want to die next week. In fact, most people really, if you get down to it, will never say, I want to die at a particular time. They will just sort of abstractly and obliquely say that death is inevitable, and because it's inevitable, it's good.
Yes.
I think we all disagree with that.
I think your argument of asking them indeed about the next day and next week thing is probably a really good one to turn that around.
That was Keith's argument, but all the same, yes.
I wanted to say that indeed we should stand together, but that I think arguments and basically when someone has a question or like a question in negative sense about someone else's direction, they should do so in a peaceful way, just trying to help each other grow. And that's what I meant to say to him actually. That of course there should be discussion. That's how we grow at all, by discussing and growing further. But that we should indeed do it together. That was basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for speaking, both Keith and you and everyone else. My question is related to psychology and about the message we want to spread. And I just keep thinking that something like a very heroic message, which is about patriotism and about how and why we want to do this. I am afraid sometimes that maybe there is a lot of subliminal messages within the context of stating a conversation between someone and asking them, like, what do you think of this? Because the instinctive reaction of someone that is directly convinced that the science is wrong, or it cannot happen, or it's like almost like it's aliens from outer space, you know? A lot of people think longevity and longer, healthier lives seem impossible, and a lot of conversations end in a way that is sometimes diluted. It's diluted the context of the concrete message. And I wonder what your thoughts or Keith's thoughts are on this.
Well, I think, Keith, if you have anything to say, just please come up and grab the mic. But I think that one of the things you have to remind people is that extending the healthy human lifespan has been a human endeavor almost forever. There are so many things that are really undeniably life extension techniques that we take for granted. Agriculture is a life extension technique. Cooked food is a life extension technique. Sanitation. I mean, there's this brilliant moment where somebody realized that you shouldn't drink out of your own sewer, and that life expectancy just skyrocketed the minute we realized that we should drink clean water. You know, these are all things we have been doing since primitive times to extend our own lifespan. This goes back even before human beings. Animals try and live a long time. I don't care if they're single-celled organisms trying to escape a source of pain or predation or whatever. Humans are better than that. We are better than pretty much any of them at this point, as far as we can tell. And we have been trying to extend our lives since the first day we picked up a rock and used it to try and find food. And what we are doing today is just more sophisticated. We've already solved the simple problems of sanitation and toothbrushes, for example. Toothbrushes are life extension devices. If you brush your teeth, they don't fall out. If they don't fall out, you can eat longer. If you eat longer, you live longer. A toothbrush is a life extension device. And people don't see that. They expect, forgive me, gene therapy is a life extension device, and that is pretty extraordinary, but it's no more extraordinary today than, you know, public sanitation was 600 years ago. And that's kind of how you have to show it to them. Keith?
Just a quick comment on that. I have to say, you know, I've talked to a lot of people about life extension involving this psychology kind of stuff, and I have to say I've actually encountered very few people that have been so resistant to it that they haven't relinquish some aspect of it. So, for example, one point that I find is, in general, always a slam dunk in my personal conversations is, like, for example, I'm going to bring my mom up, right? My mom is a devout Christian, and she wants to see her parents when she dies, right? And that's a really, I can't argue with that, you know, if she really believes that's the way things are. And who am I to say that it's not? I don't think it's necessarily likely. But the point is that, okay, I could say, all right, Mom, so you don't want this maybe for yourself, right? But odds are somebody you know, somebody you love, you know, obviously at least one, right, would like this chance. You're just affording opportunity and choices to people. So don't you think that's objectively a good thing? Let people make their own choice about it. You're allowing them to have these choices. So, any more questions?
Okay. Didier, well, somebody. Didier first. Tatiana will get you to in a second.
Yeah, I like very much your speech, especially this aspect that we do not know what is going to be a success. There are so many things concerning life extension, and so we have to keep, I would say, a healthy skepticism, but also positive for all people trying to find a way. What I want to say is, first in Brussels, the 29 and 30 of September and the 1st of October, there will be Euro Symposium on Healthy Aging, and the third day, so the 1st of October, will be to continue this discussion about how to go further. I want also to say that David Wood write a beautiful. David Wood is a futurist in UK. He wrote a beautiful book, The Abolition of Aging, and I advise all of you to read it. It's really great. And then I want to say one thing more. It's I think very important to say that life extension must be a choice and it's not an obligation. That's maybe something that you don't see that I don't see in your text. And the question is a rhetorical question, but I ask you, can you send this to to me and to the people of Hills so that we can also discuss this aspect the 1st of October?
Didier, considering the critique that you gave me a week or two ago on my own deck, I would be honored to send it to you for use at Heels. I should say to anybody here who is in Europe that Heels is a wonderful conference. And Didier and Sven are driving forces for this. If you happen to be in the area, I would strongly recommend that you attend. It's a great thing to do. Didier, you had one other question, I'm sorry, which I'm afraid I forgot. Well, I was thinking such more.
Remarks, but the fact that in your text it's a little bit like you have, let's say, the deathist and the longevitist, and I think the people who want to die, they must have this choice to die of old age. And so
Right. I would never deny anybody the choice to end their life. In fact, I have done some work on mind uploading where the question is just that. You know, if you create a constitution for an immortal humanity, one of the rights that you have as an uploaded consciousness has to be the right to say, that's enough. If you've lived 60,000 years, let's say long before the dawn of recorded history, and you're just tired of it, you shouldn't have to say, well, forget it. You wanted to live forever, and now you're stuck with it. At some point, we all have the right to say, no, that's enough. I didn't think it was necessary to bring that point up. If somebody really wants to end their life, they can throw themselves in front of a streetcar. Demian, yes?
Well, honestly, I would also like to have the right to abstain from that right, to legally bind myself that I will be treated if I ever say I'm going to die.
Yeah, I agree. Tatiana?
Just thank you for speaking. Just some comment. Well, I like very much your example on the impossibility, in brackets, of flying, of airplane. Well, the whole history of science, someone told, is a history of a fight against illusion, which is called common sense. And the inevitability of death, it's this kind of a cultural bias, which we are one of the strongest cultural biases which we are learned, which we are taught since our childhood. So while you are trying to introduce these new ideas, you're fighting against the strongest cultural prejudice, which we all get infected by this prejudice. So. And just to add to what Rather said about like falsification, if we get, well, I think what we need is more brainstorm, the element of the intellectual freedom and the freedom to suggest any, even the most crazy ideas, and reality itself will select between the viable and not viable ideas. So the falsification function, the function of selecting the right idea, that would be obvious. But we indeed need more freedom to brainstorm, because brainstorm is what fuels scientific discovery. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're right that the words everybody knows are dangerous for what we do. I think we have time for one more question.
Yes.
Two. Okay.
Thank you one more time.
Thank you, Luis.
It was heart-touching, your presentation. Thank you. Personally, I can remember registered history, how religion decided at a certain point in history of every culture to empower and support science. Now, in our modern times, something changed. Science became more independent and technology as well. Now, from the point of view of modern religion or traditions that have a spiritual way of thinking, or from a naturalist's point of view, science and technology became so strong and with so strong arguments that itself may have the behavior of a religion or spiritual movement itself, as it's following its own dogmas. So I think we are going out of that limitation, because we're becoming more open year by year as a scientific and technological community. But now here's my question. While the most modern spiritual approaches are looking for science to meet spirituality, the point of longevity, to, survive, to live longer, to be free of a destiny decided by God, the divine, or, the values that our religion suggests to us. That is a really difficult point where I find there is a lot of, very strong discussions where people do not listen to each other anymore and don't listen to their own hearts anymore. So what is your experience in this field? I'm sure there is a lot of spiritual, naturalist arguments against technology and science. How to deal with scientists supporting those streams?
Well, I think if you ask most people who espouse religion as a way of finding God, whatever God might be defined as, you'll find that they all agree that it takes a lot of time. And if you're lucky, or completely enlightened, or you have a bolt from the blue that just shows up and says, me voici, here I am, it takes a while to achieve enlightenment. And I think that even a deeply religious person would understand that an extra 100 years gives you more time to find God.
Good argument. Very good argument, for sure.
I guess we have one more up there.
Okay. Who wants the last question? Oh, yes.
Yes, about the point that DJ made about, which also kind of involved the point, the presentation of Kiev, I believe, is when we're talking about getting the greater public to engage on health extension. When we're talking about the choice to die, about that, you said it wasn't, didn't consider it important to mention that in this presentation. Well, I agree on that one, especially within a quite close community at this point, because, obviously we're all quite aware of that choice will always remain and that won't be a problem. But when we're talking about the greater public, I think it's rather important to mention that that choice will always remain, because in the discussions that I personally had with, deafists, I always noticed that they were largely afraid because they were also afraid that their choice to die would somehow be taken away from them. So I think it depends on the audience that you're talking that's involved, whether it's important or not to include that message.
I agree, but I think that we are trying hard to remind people that we can live for a very long time. I don't think we have to remind them that they can always die. God may have given man life, and in the view of some fundamentalist religious types, man cannot take away what God has given, but God also gave us cliffs. He gave us freight trains. He gave us all kinds of poisonous mushrooms. If we really want to end our lives, we do not need to explain ourselves to the God that gave us those means. So I don't think that's really so much of a problem. There are plenty of people who believe, though, that, as they call it, state-sponsored or assisted suicide is the wrong thing. In California, where I'm from, it's only been since June 9th that we've had the right to end our own lives if we are in extremis. And frankly, I'm rather grateful for that. I happen to have cancer, and although I'm doing just great, thank you, I was very relieved to know that the state would not stop me from ending my own life if I determined I ever had to do so. But there are people who still believe that that is the responsibility, even the obligation of the state, is to save people from themselves. I don't know what to say to those people. We are ourselves. We can do what we please, and as long as God's made cliffs, they can't stop anybody. Okay?
Fair enough. Thank you.